Dolapo, good morning. Thanks for coming.
Great to be here.
It looks very
me.
difficult and interesting times, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's a very, very interesting time with all of this. Our oil, the price of oil can actually, I don't want to use the word dislocate, but cause sleepless night for both the president, the executive, the National Assembly, the central bank, for investors, and for you analysts, and some way to those of us who are journalists covering the markets.
Yeah, it is, because when you're an economy that is dependent almost entirely on oil for foreign exchange, you tend to have this kind of issues. 96% of your exports from oil, 70% of revenues, yeah, you will see this kind of situations.
This is a very interesting situation. But let's get to the key reason why we brought you here. Now we're seeing, when this actually started, well, if I give myself credit for that, I used the word rattling, that President Buhari will rattle the oil sector, and he's doing the rattling.
Yeah.
Now, is this a game changer? Will this set of reforms in the oil sector, NNPC on one hand, the broader oil markets on the side, and then we'll get to subsidies and things like that.
Exactly.
Well, does this look to you like a game-changing exercise at the end of it all?
I mean, without being too forward, I think the stage where we are, you know, last time we had this discussion and you asked me if this was it. I said maybe we're still at 1.5 over 10.
And I remember that a few weeks ago, and I haven't bothered to ask you if you've raised that. You just have raised that rating.
Well, what we've seen now, I mean, we could take it a notch higher. That yes, I think we're moving along the right path. I see the reforms at the refineries as a very good step to take. We talked about, the NNPC mentioned the fact that they could actually save about $1 billion for Nigeria
if the
refineries were working fine. And of course, there's a caveat on the fact that we may not be able to get all the refineries up to full capacity. I'm not sure I'm aware of any refinery in Africa that works at above 90% or so. And then again, we have one very old refinery in Port Harcourt 1, which might be very difficult
in 1978.
1958, actually.
1958.
Yeah, we bought
British Petroleum.
Exactly. So it's quite old. So it might be a bit difficult to get that to full capacity. But again, like I said, the three refineries, especially Warri, for instance,
and Kaduna.
Kaduna is a bit of an issue because, again, don't forget, that's an inland refinery, not near any oil field. So it really depends on the crude oil that is piped to it.
The pipeline.
Yeah, and as long as that pipeline keeps on getting vandalized, it's not well protected, it's going to be an issue. So, I mean,
out of the four refineries, the Kaduna refinery seems to be the best.
Yes.
Then Warri.
Yes, and then Warri, and then you have Port Harcourt 2.
Because I remember during the late Abacha's regime, there was a major turnaround exercise done on the Kaduna refinery that was contracted to Tafina Oil for France.
Yes.
And that was completed. And we spent millions of dollars on that. So Kaduna refinery looks like, yes. Is that the reason why Kachiku, the new group CEO at NNPC, says, look, Kaduna, you've got to get up and running, because if I get you running at full speed, I could save Nigerian government $500 million.
Yes. If I can say to you that I spoke to one of the companies that was working on the reforms at the Kaduna refinery, and they told me that, look, the refinery is in good shape. If you look at data from even the NNPC in 2013, 2014, you see that among the capacity reported by the refineries, Kaduna tended to always have one of the highest. It was always Kaduna or Warri, and then we had the fire incident in Warri in 2013, and 2014 also too. So Warri refinery capacity was a bit limited, but Kaduna tends to always have that. What has always been a problem is, number one, very low storage in the Kaduna refinery location, very low storage. So they only have about 1 month supply. So even if the crude pipeline were not working, it means if we start it now, we'd have to shut it down in the next 3-4 weeks. And
that explains why Kachiku wants the full military might.
Exactly.
Especially the Air Force and the Nigerian Army defending the pipeline, the network that goes all the way to Kaduna, where that refinery is located.
Exactly, because if we can get the pipelines protected, if we can get the pipelines able to service the refineries, I mean, we would cut imports significantly. And pretty much also the crude oil swap as well, because really the crude oil swap originates from the fact that the refineries are not able to refine the crude.
So we went into those contracts.
And so we went into those contracts to reduce it.
Thanks for bringing that into the conversation, which is the next issue about this. Some companies have since gotten their swap terminated.
Yes.
Sahara Energy was one of them. ITO was one of them. Yeah. A few of these names have appeared in the press already. Now, so we're saving money.
Yes.
Most likely. Yeah, we're saving money.
To some extent, yes.
To some extent, yes. And we're saving crude.
And we're also saving crude. But I think the interesting thing is this. What this NNPC has said is not that, look, we've said we're not doing this again. What they've said is that, look, we're stopping the current arrangement, but then we're inviting companies to bid
For the same.
For the same.
So we haven't gotten out of the game.
So we're not entirely out. We're out to some extent because
the
we've cut out
previous
some company of the previous arrangement. So they've stopped effectively. But the question now is we're going to re-sign companies under stricter terms, under probably more regulated, more monitored terms.
And perhaps disclosed.
And possibly with a lot more disclosure.
Because Nigerians would want to know how many barrels of crude do you hand over to XY Oil and Gas Limited, and how much petrol was brought back. Well, as if that appears on the NNPC website. If you just click and you can see that. Say, crude oil swap, one corner, who gets this was brought back.
I mean, for us as analysts, that would be fantastic if we could get to that point, It would be difficult because, of course, there's always a lag in reporting time by even the oil companies themselves. And all
but this is okay.
That would
if
be
you
ideal.
say, well, January 1st, this was what you got, and this was what this company brought back, you can always update it as we move along.
Exactly.
Now, one of the stories coming out of this entire reform was Sahara Energy 2 days ago announces that, look, well, we got booted out of the oil swap deal, the OPA is what it's called.
Yeah.
And then we are doing an IPO. We're looking for $1.4 billion and all of that. That looks like very good news. For those of us in the financial markets, that is really good news. We want more of Seplat type to be there. We want Shoreline Energy and the rest of them. This looks like a game changer, or rather, an unintended consequence of Buhari's reform in the oil sector.
In a way, I wouldn't say exactly so, because, this, and Sahara did mention it as well, that they had started this process as far back as 2014. In fact, possibly even something that they've been thinking about for a while. But in 2014, they had initiated that discussion, and they started to contact parties that, look, we're trying to raise this kind of money.
I will agree.
But the thing is that, unfortunately, the timing has changed because, again, oil prices, we've seen the situation in the oil market change significantly. So now it's two things. And I'm happy about this development because some years back when your Seplat offer came up, I was asked that, what kind of companies could achieve this kind of feat again? And I said, look, for me, in my mind, it's the class of 2010 divestments and possibly Sahara. And when I mean 2010 divestments, all those companies that bought shale assets then. We're talking about Shoreline, you're talking about Nest Oil, you're talking about Eland Oil, all those companies that bought OMLs, 30, 34, 40, 42. Those are the companies that look like, they've had 5 years of running those fields now. Technically, they should be able to access equity from the, if not just the Nigerian equity market, but looking at equity. So technically, a Sahara should be approaching the market now. But the issue is always going to be for large businesses like Sahara, efficiency issues, issues like you have so many businesses. A Sahara business has 20 operating companies. On the upstream side alone, you'll probably have about 3 or 4 different companies, Sahara Upstream, Sahara Energy Fields, Asharami, you have Energid. So there are several companies on that side. So with large companies like that, you tend to find a situation where you have maybe some of the parts always being bigger than the whole, because you have some very wonderful businesses, then you have some dragging on either profitability or on cash flow, which tends to affect valuations and give the companies a little more constrained view. So I think it's quite positive that they themselves have been a bit conservative and saying that, look, we want to raise $600 million. And we think that would be about...
I want to do $800 million in bond.
In bonds.
That's quite significant.
Yes, it is. It gives them a valuation of $2 billion. Which, again, is still a bit of a difficult sell. But for the company of that size, with several business lines, I think it's a positive.
Let's broaden it a little bit, because it looks like we're having more of our own. I'm sounding a bit nationalistic here now. Companies in the oil and gas business. And we spent decades saying, look, Nigerians are not in this business. It's all about Shell, BP, ExxonMobil, Esso,
yes.
ENI,
exactly.
and the Phillips and the rest of them, ConocoPhillips and all that. Now we have Owando in the business. We have Sahara Energy, we got Seplat, and we got Shoreline Group.
Yes, Nestor.
So now this looks like, fine, this is good, and what President Buhari is doing will continue to turn us around,
yes,
for us to look inward and take ownership of the natural resource that the country has on its own back, on its own soil, not on its own backyard. Yeah,
I think it will. The reforms are quite good, and I think it would really encourage more participation from the local side of the business, because transparency is always going to be key. You want to get into the business and be able to know that if I'm dealing either with the government, because no matter how you deal with, when it comes to natural resources, you will have to deal with the government, and it will be through NNPC. So the cleaner the NNPC is, the more transparent the NNPC is, the more structured the NNPC is, the easier it is to do business with them. You have more clarity on maybe what how you procure your licenses, what sort of fees will be involved to get licenses renewed, contracts and all that. So it gives a lot more clarity, which would encourage a lot more Nigerian participation.
We've seen a lot of money coming into this sector from provided by Nigerian banks, perhaps EcoBank.
Exactly.
I'm not sure you want to say that. You guys are all over Africa, the oil
Yes, we do.
chasing the oil money. So the financial services sector will also benefit from this. At the end of it all, it looks like we can just use one stone to kill as many birds as possible.
Well, yeah, it's because that one bird is pretty much a big bird that houses that's the mother to several other birds.
That is enough to put on a dinner table.
Yes, so that's why, and that's why it's quite critical for Nigeria to get those reforms in. We've been speaking about this for a while. That look, we need to recalibrate the oil sector in Nigeria, and it starts with the NNPC, and then it starts to feed into the companies themselves. For years, we've been talking about the fact that the Nigerian oil sector is not well funded in terms of equity. There's so much reliance on debt. As at December, the oil companies were like 25.7% of bank loans. And that's quite a huge amount when you think about what has been borrowed to the oil sector. There needs to be a lot more equity. So it's always exciting to see companies accessing the equity market.
Yeah, 2 minutes. Well, what else would you want President Buhari to do? What more rattling would you want him to do? He's handed it over, as it were, to Kachiku. Dr. Kachiku, who is the group managing director, and he too has been rattling. He went to Warri, knocked phone guys in Kaduna, went to Port Harcourt and gave a few knocks.
Exactly.
And said, I put it here, so get ready, you got it. So, what else do you think we should do?
Okay, this is quite good. Because
to keep the momentum.
Yes, I think so. This is exciting because, I'm currently looking at what's going on in the exploration space in West Africa and pretty much the whole of Middle Africa, as we call it. We're looking at outlook for next year already, and we're realizing the fact that, look, exploration capital is moving elsewhere. Exploration capital especially is moving to North Africa. We're seeing a lot of developments in North Africa. There's been that huge find offshore Egypt.
Yeah, Egypt has its eyes on that.
Tunisia will soon become an oil-producing country. They've had a couple of discoveries as well. So the NOCs, or rather the IOCs, are eyeing the Middle East and North Africa. And then with Iran coming back on the table, there's a lot of exploration capital that will be invested there as well. So we need to start moving now towards fiscal terms. We need to start looking at how to incentivize deep water discovery. They're already making a lot of noise offshore Angola and Congo that, look, exploration costs are expensive here. Governments need to help us so that we can continue investing. Oil companies invest about $25 to $27 billion in Nigeria every year. We need to make it attractive for them to shift some of that capital to the deep water and start to bring some of those reserves out. The more reserves we get, even within this oil price environment, the more it is, the better it is for our revenue.
And some analysts are looking at we could be exporting a bit more volume in October
than we are. Yes,
that we're doing.
Yeah, that of course again would add to the glut in the market because we also have the buzzard North Sea oil field coming back on stream with a lot more volume. So that's a bit of an issue on itself. But yes, revenue boost.
Okay. Looks like you pick it from the front, falls from the back, then you pick it from the back.
Several moving parts.
Several moving parts.
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your time.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, we hope to see you in the next couple of days.
Okay.
Whether phone, Skype, or live here in the studio. Okay. Dolapo Oni, Head of Energy Research at EcoBank Development Corporation.